Welcome to episode 53 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hennig. On this edition of the podcast, I'm going to run it back for you, my conversations from Sports Bash Saturday about the state of the Eagles at their bye week and why the Jordan Matthews signing is a huge sign to the fan base, plus my conversation with Colin Thompson, Temple alumni, played college football in Division I and played in the NFL. Get his perspective on the state of Temple football as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. Plus, what are the warning signs from the CW that Disney Plus and Marvel Studios needs to learn from? I'll get into all that and more coming up on episode 53 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I did want to start, though, and we want to touch on the Eagles before we get into anything else. Eagles during the bye week is usually a time that Doug Peterson has the opportunity to kind of hit the reset button. He always talks about we want to reevaluate, we want to relook at ourselves. And I think the Eagles told you something very important this week when they signed Jordan Matthews. When they signed Jordan Matthews, and remember, they released Andrew Sendejo. So the combination of the two, Sendejo and Jordan Matthews, tell you something very specific. This team is not willing to sacrifice the future for the present. And I think that's something we really have to emphasize and understand moving forward. And I know it's not fun. I know it's not a sexy conversation, but let's be realistic. Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson, Andy Weidel, who was Joe Douglas's right-hand man, who's now Joe Douglas's job in the front office. The brain trust in the front office all understand something together. If you're an Eagles fan, you might not want to hear this. This roster is getting old. Jason Peters is probably done. Darren Sproles probably should have retired last year. Alshon Jeffrey's in his early 30s. Zach Ertz is getting older. I mean, Zach Ertz is still a great player, but he's getting older. All of these guys, they're not young anymore. So with an aging roster, you cannot sacrifice your future for the present. I think that's a big reason why the Eagles did not make any major deals at the deadline, because they were not willing to give up high future picks for a playoff run this year. I think that they understood that when it comes to this situation that they're in, they have a lot of guys under contract for the next couple of years, but after that, you're going to see a lot of salary cap open up. And when you look up and down this roster, Carson Wentz is one of the only guys who is in his mid-20s and will still be in his 20s in a few years. I look up and down this roster and I see a major, major issue when it comes to their future. Part of the reason why you draft a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, part of the reason why you draft guys like Sharif Miller and Sidney Jones is because you're looking at the future. You're looking at down the road. You're looking at 2, 3, 4 years from now. And I know that's not a great conversation for a lot of you out there who look at the Philadelphia Eagles and say, well, what about winning now? I want to win now. I want to win a Super Bowl. I get it. All right. I hear you. I meet you guys out in public. I hear you guys calling the radio shows like Mays and Aton Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. I see the texts on the text board throughout the week and every weekend. You know, Billy Schwein, he's a hardcore sports fan. You know, he's a diehard Philly fan. You know, he feels the same way. There's a lot of you out there who don't want to hear about the future. But the future is a big part of keeping this team competitive. You cannot overlook the reality that this is an aging roster. Jason Kelce, Zach Ertz, Jason Peters, Malcolm Jenkins. These are all aging guys. Brandon Graham. These are not guys who are, you know, they're on the downside of 30. They're getting to the point where they're going to be closer to the end of their career than the beginning of their career. They're not even in there, some of them in their primes anymore. Jason Peters, like I said, realistically, he's probably going to retire after this year, and him and Sproles, they're way past their prime. They're no longer the same players they used to be. So when I look at the Eagles and I see that they brought in Jordan Matthews this year, when I see the Philadelphia Eagles went out and released Sendejo so they don't have to give up the comp pick, that tells me that this organization is keenly aware of the future. And if you give Carson Wentz the contract that you gave him, you're giving Jason Kelce the guaranteed money moving forward that you give him. You didn't sign Brandon Brooks for no good reason a couple of years ago. You had a specific reason why you locked him up. You are setting up this roster to not just win in the short term, but you're protecting yourself for the long term. And the beautiful thing with having a lot of draft picks is if you have the opportunity to have multiple shots at getting talent. Not every draft pick is going to be a home run. Not every draft pick is going to work. Look at Belichick and the Patriots. How many times can you go through their draft picks and be like, ooh, that wasn't a good pick. But then if Belichick's got 8 picks and he hits on 4 out of 8, he's still hitting at 50% and he's still winning championships. He's still winning the East. He's still winning and getting to the Super Bowl and having a chance to win. That's what the Eagles are trying to do as well. And the Eagles understand when they hired Joe Douglas a few years ago, and Douglas brought Andy Weidel with him, who is now the new Joe Douglas. Those guys came after spending a decade in the Baltimore Ravens organization. And what did the Ravens do for over a decade plus with Ozzie Newsome? They kept their draft picks. They took multiple shots on players in the draft. And they didn't hit on all those picks. Look, for every great pick that they had, look at the Ravens had. They had Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis. They drafted guys like Paul Kruger. They drafted guys like Bart Scott. Yeah, they hit on all those guys, but there were other guys that didn't work out. We don't talk about Terrence Cody very much from Alabama. He was a bust. You don't talk as much about some of the other players that the Ravens drafted because we always focus on the guys they did hit. They drafted Kyle Bowler before they got Joe Flacco. So I think that when you look at the Ravens' history, what did they say? They said, look, every year we need to have our picks if we're going to rebuild and we're going to reload and we're going to arm ourselves for years to come. And look at the Ravens. Outside of the Patriots, there's only one other team in the AFC that has been consistently been there for the last 15 years competitive, and one of them is the Ravens. Another one is the Steelers. Look what the Steelers have done over the years. They constantly have draft picks. They're constantly taking shots on guys. And they had the luxury to trade some of those picks to get Minkah Fitzpatrick to bring him in because they viewed him as a first-round pick. So for all the names that were out there, Patrick Peterson, Robbie Anderson, Jalen Ramsey, all the guys that, all the guys that if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you might have been interested in. You don't want to give up a ton of draft capital to get those guys because what if someone gets injured? What if someone doesn't want to re-sign with you? Then you're left without the pick and without the player. So the Eagles, to me, they're telling you point blank that they need you to understand that they're trying to win now and prepare for the future. I don't think that we take into consideration enough that the Eagles are trying to win for a long time, not a short time. The Philadelphia Eagles understand that when you have multiple shots at picks, you have multiple opportunities to get it right. And I think that's a big reason why that they brought in Jordan Matthews and they released Andrew Sendejo. I think Sendejo has been a disappointment for the Eagles this year. I don't think that was a move that paid the amount of dividends that they had hoped. And I think it's part of the reason why they let him go. I think another reason, not just the draft pick, but I think also he just wasn't producing for you. I'm still surprised they let go LJ Ford. He's playing very well for the Ravens right now. And the Ravens just re-signed him to a contract extension. I think the Eagles are looking up and down their roster. They're realizing that this roster is not as deep as they had hoped it was. And the talent that they had picked up in the last few years is not as good as they had hoped. I think they realized, looking at their quarterback situation, for example, that they're probably going to let Darby walk. I don't see a huge opportunity for them to bring him back. I think that the Eagles realize he is what he is. I think the Eagles, moving forward, they're disappointed in Sidney Jones. They're disappointed in Nelson Aguilar. They're disappointed in some of the guys that they have drafted. While Rasul Douglas has been a solid player, and Avonte Maddox is a very good slot corner, I think they also understand that they got a plan for a future where they're going to turn over some of this roster. And you don't bring in Jordan Matthews if you're not planning for a future where the roster is going to look different. Jordan Matthews is patchwork. Jordan Matthews is a safe addition to bring in to take care of a team. And I think that's why they made the addition. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not, it's not Antonio Brown, right? I know it's not Josh Gordon. I know it's not fill in the blank player that we all talked about they could trade for. When I saw the rumors the Eagles were interested in Patrick Peterson, I personally got excited. I think Patrick Peterson would have been a great addition for this team. Even though he's probably, the end of his prime, he's still a very capable, good player, and he's certainly an upgrade over Sidney Jones. In fact, if I were the Eagles, I would have traded Sidney Jones if it could have meant getting a guy like a Patrick Peterson or a Marcus Peters at this point. But it didn't happen because according to all the reports from the people like Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen and Mike Garafolo and all the NFL national media insiders, the story was that every team around the league, the Cardinals, the Jets, every team that was considered to be in sell mode, they were asking for too much. Apparently, the Broncos wanted high draft picks for Chris Harris. That the Cardinals wanted high draft picks for Patrick Peterson. That the Jets wanted a second-round pick for Robbie Anderson. The guy's going to be a free agent. Heck, if you're the Eagles, you're not going to trade a second-round pick for Robbie Anderson. He's going to be a free agent. Just pick him up in free agency. You save the draft pick and you save a little hassle on the way. I think that the Eagles understand that moving forward, they need to be smart about what they're doing with their roster. And I think that's a big reason why Jordan Matthews is back. I think Jordan Matthews is the guy who understands the offense. He's friends with Carson Wentz. I mean, they spend time off the field together. They go to the same church. All that stuff. So there's something to be said for the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles need some familiarity to fill the void because moving forward, they need to change what they're doing on offense. Not having Deshaun Jackson is a huge blow, and I get it. We don't have that deep threat. It shrinks the field. It shrinks the defense. It shrinks what the team is doing with the offense, what they can do, their flexibility. I think the Eagles need to step back during this bye week, and they need to have the conversation the Patriots had last year. The reports were that last year during the bye week, the Patriots, Belichick sat down with his offensive coaching staff and said, what do we do best? What are we good at? What is legitimately something that works? And they went to him and said, we're really good at running the ball. So Belichick said that we're going to become a ball control offense that runs the ball because we can't be a high-powered offense like Kansas City. And because they became a ball control offense, they played keep away enough for them to win the AFC Championship. They wore down the Rams enough in the Super Bowl for them to have a chance to win that game. So when you look around at the Eagles, what do they do well? They're actually pretty good at running the ball. Jordan Howard is top 10 in the NFL in yards per carry among running backs with at least 100 carries this year. He's averaging over 4 yards a carry. So if you think about it, if Jordan Howard is going to carry the ball at least one of the 3 downs every offensive possession, you're guaranteed to get 4 yards on average. I think the Eagles, with Jordan Matthews, who can block, by the way, with Dallas Goedert, who's become a much better blocker, Zach Ertz, who is not a great blocker for a tight end, but he has improved a bit. And when you look up and down this roster, you realize that even Alshon Jeffrey can block. The Eagles are actually preparing to run the ball. And they're going to have receivers who can do multiple things. Miles Sanders can run the ball and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Jordan Matthews can play in the slot and the outside. He's not a great outside receiver, but he has the ability to do it within this offense. I think Doug Peterson has the opportunity during this bye week to change the offense, to become a time of possession, ball control offense that plays off of their run game with receivers who do their best in short windows. Alshon Jeffrey is not a burner. Jordan Matthews is not a burner. Zach Ertz is not a burner. Dallas Goedert, he's slightly faster than Ertz. He's not a speed guy either. The fastest guys are actually Miles Sanders and Alshon Jeffrey, and you're not going to depend on those guys to stretch the field. You got to change the offense. You got to change the strategy. You have in the offseason to go out and hit it big. Go get Robbie Anderson in the offseason. Go get somebody in the offseason. Throw the money out then. And then go into the draft. You're always going to have the shot to draft somebody. And who knows, maybe next year J.J. Arcega-Whiteside develops into a better receiver by then. Maybe by then Miles Sanders shows he's even a better all-around running back than he is now. I think that because we're such prisoners of the moment that we forget that there is a future for this organization. Part of that future of this organization is, how do you build the best team to win a championship? And they've shown you already that they can win a championship by the depth that they can build on both sides of the ball. And I think the combination of the injuries the last couple of years with guys just underperforming compared to expectations has really what's held this team back. I don't blame Howie Roseman for guys dropping the ball. I don't blame Doug Peterson when a guy misses a block. I don't blame Carson Wentz when a receiver, runs the wrong route and he has to hold on to the ball for an extra half a second to a second. I don't blame, other players if a guy can't do their job. But what do? If guys show they can't do their job, well, you bring in somebody else next year. You notice Stefan Wisniewski is no longer here because he can't do the job anymore. Kansas City brought him in because they needed somebody. They needed a body at that point. And by the way, you've seen with quarterbacks around the league, the quarterbacks who can't be protected, the teams that can't play defense, they're not championship caliber. Joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, you get to hear him on Countdown to Kickoff Sundays and Mondays with Tony Bruno. He's on the call for Temple football. He played college football at the highest level, played in the NFL, got drafted by the XFL. He is Colin Thompson. He joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Colin, how you doing today?
Doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me on, man. You sound great.
I appreciate you jumping on. So before we get to anything else, I did want to touch base with you about Temple's win on Thursday night. 6 straight years now, Temple is bowl eligible. Huge win by the defense in that game. A great performance. I understand it's USF, but those Thursday, Friday night games we've seen all year long have been a fluky situation. I mean, I'm watching that Washington-Oregon State game last night, and both those teams could barely score for the first 3 quarters. It was so bizarre. So, for Temple to go to South Florida, it's not a traditional schedule, not a traditional week, get a win, the defense performed the way it did. I think it's a credit to the coaching. I think it's a credit to the kids.
No question. And I think it helps, too, when you have a bye. They didn't have a crazy short week. They didn't have a game on a Saturday night, and then they roll into a Thursday night game. They had a bye, which Temple needed. They were skidding backwards and really had no identity as a team. People were questioning the starting quarterback, which I think was unfair. But it's a credit to the kids, right? This is the, 6th year you said? Bowl
6 years,
in a row? 6 years. 3 different head coaches. Put that in perspective. Temple loses coaches for the right reasons because they're good. Most teams lose head coaches because they stink. So these coaches go to different programs. Really 4 head coaches if you count Manny Diaz, who went to Miami. That's Matt Rule, Jeff Collins, Manny Diaz, and now Rod Carey. You're in a bowl game. Some other coaches that were there that are successful, Steven Dazio, Al Golden. So Temple's had a great tradition of coaches, but it's the players. They're all local for the most part. Jersey, ton of Jersey talent, Baltimore talent, Philadelphia talent, Western PA talent, and a huge win going down for the Bulls. Jagger Gardner had a career day running the ball, 25 carries for 133 yards, and he's their backup. Jaden Blue, their star receiver, had 11 catches for 121 yards. And Temple went from, we're just going to be in a bowl game, this is great, to now, after the loss last night, UCF losing to Tulsa, Temple's second in the East, and if they win out, they're in the Eastern title. So the season seemed lost after really getting your butt whooped against SMU and UCF, to now you have a shot to win out and control your own destiny, which is that's all you ask for.
Absolutely. And, looking at the overall picture of college football, I think for Temple to be a competitive program and keep getting better, I think it's good for the Northeast, because let's be realistic. The Northeast is not traditionally a hotbed for college football power. Outside of Penn State, and Syracuse for, a couple of short windows, the Northeast, when it comes to schools like Rutgers, UConn, UMass, BC, these are not traditional powerhouses. So for Temple to have the opportunity to accumulate talent and be competitive, especially in a market like Philadelphia, I think is a real testament to the program. I think it's also a testament to the region.
No question. It is a testament to the region for sure. And Well, there's so great high school football here. How many kids get plucked out every year? And we're watching Michigan, and there's a kid from South Jersey. We're watching Florida, where I went to start. The starting tight end now, he's an Archbishop Wood kid from Pennsylvania. I went there, Archbishop Wood kid from Pennsylvania, and I was a tight end in the University of Florida. So you're recruited nationally, and they recruit this area, and they pluck kids out. But the challenge is, can you get kids to stay? And what Temple does is, here's an opportunity to come play, and now you're going to a bowl game every year. When Temple was a 30-year drought period, 30 years of no bowl. So we were talking on the way home after the USF game on our way back to Philly, and now it's a normal thing to go to a bowl game. And it's a credit to Temple in a really tough division now in the American Conference. I think it's safe to say Power 6 now instead of Power 5.
Colin Thompson joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you've heard him on Counting the Kickoff Sundays and Mondays. And speaking of Counting the Kickoff, I opened the show talking about the Eagles, Colin. I want to get your perspective on this. To me, I think the Eagles have made a clear sign the last couple of weeks that signing Jordan Matthews, letting go of Andrew Sendejo, keeping their draft picks. They're sending a clear message that, look, we still want to win this year, but we understand that we're getting old. Jason Peters, Darren Sproles, Malcolm Jenkins, Brandon Graham, these are guys who are either in the end of their prime or after their prime at this point. And I think the Eagles realize, whether the fans want to admit it or not, they need the ammunition for the future of this organization. They're going to keep being competitive. I think that has a lot to do with why they didn't make certain moves at the trade deadline and why they're making some of the moves they're making now with what people would consider patchwork like Jordan Matthews.
Well, I think they valued the players coming off that were injured. No team is going to do as well, in my opinion, as the Eagles have done with the injuries they've had in pivotal positions. We all know how hard it is to play cornerback in the NFL now. You're up against it with the refs. You're up against it because these receivers are better than ever. The quarterbacks are better than ever. There's a good quarterback on every team now, it seems like. There's not like 14 good guys anymore. There's everybody's got a good backup. There's more quarterback depth ever now than there's ever been. So I think, one, you're 100% right, they're getting old. I think the other thing is they're getting expensive. You're paying your quarterback, and which will kick in a year or two, about the max money you could be paying a quarterback. So there's not the same amount of room to build your team through free agency. So you're right, they have to draft. And I think they were aggressive in the trade deadline. I think they were, but I just think the prices were way too high for what they were getting. And Howie needs guys that are coming in on 3, 4 year deals, not 1 or 2 year deals. So I like what the Eagles done. I think they turned a corner. People say they need this deep threat receiver. How many teams have a deep threat receiver in the NFL? 10, maybe? Does New England have one? No. Does the Packers have one without Adams?
Not
no.
Really.
They did all these great. Everyone's infatuated with this deep receiver thing, and I'm like, they have explosive players. 2 tight ends are very explosive. Alshon, when you use him the right way, okay, he's had his drops, but he's a veteran receiver. He'll come back. He's explosive in different ways. And explosion doesn't have to be just down the field plays. Alshon's tough to tackle, and then you have Miles Sanders, who's grown into a role receiving wise that you can get explosive plays out of. So they have the weapons, and now I think they've been forced to change their game. I always say, where'd you invest? Where's your money, which we just talked about? It's in the offensive line. They have high draft picks there. They pay Lane Johnson there. Obviously, Kelsey. Brooks is all pro. You have a first-round pick in left tackle. So, and you develop a guy like Sam Malalu and Vaitai. So you have talent there. They've used that talent now, and now they have Jordan Howard to keep beating the rock. So I like the way the Eagles are heading. I'm actually optimistic of where they're going, and their schedule gets a little bit easier after these 2 games against Seattle and New England.
I want to reappropriate a question to you that I asked Mike Gill earlier this week on the Sports Bash, and I want to ask you specifically because you played at the highest levels. You were around some of the best athletes in the game. The Philadelphia Eagles, they have drop issues. All their receivers. It's not just this year. It's been the last few years under Doug Peterson. Who do you blame for the drop issues with this team?
The players. They blame themselves too. I mean, you can't say this receiver coach isn't putting us through drills enough to catch the ball. You have to focus and make that catch. I am a big Jimmy's and Joe's over X's and O's guy. I always say that because it's on the players. You can say what you want about Doug Peterson or this OC or that OC. Every play is designed to score a touchdown. every single play against every coverage, whether it's man or zone. There's checks now the football game has changed so much because of the knowledge we have now. Quarterbacks are reading defenses pre-snap, they're reading defenses post-snap. Receivers aren't just running routes anymore, they're reading defenses. So to me, it's on the players. You want to get it done, it's on your players, and they have plenty of talent in that position. The thing is, we knew Nelson had drop issues, and he still does well with 5-6 catches games, but people hold him on this pedestal that he's got to get 1 million catches. He is what he is. So have that expectation that he's a solid number 3 receiver, number 4 receiver, but people hold him to a number 1 position. The drops from Alshon are inexcusable, and he'll tell you that. So to me, it's on the players and not the coaches.
So what is the best way for the Eagles to solve this problem moving forward then? Is it something where they go into the offseason and they overhaul the receiver group? Is it something where the organization is patient with some of the younger players? How is the best way to handle that moving forward? Because obviously this year it's the roster the way it is. It's 2019. There's X number of games left. But for 2020, you want to put the best team around Carson Wentz as possible to be successful.
Well, for 2019, I would keep feeding him the ball. It's like Steph Curry's going cold. Hey, Steph, keep shooting. They have to keep throwing the ball down the field. And I'm not saying, 40-yard bombs, but Nelson makes plays. He drops balls short, but he's going to make enough plays to get by and stay on a roster. He'll play for forever. He's a good enough player and a first-round pick. And Alshon's been a Pro Bowl type receiver. You have to keep feeding him the ball. Keep shooting three-pointers. It's the same analogy I've had. They've caught a lot more passes than they've dropped, and they're good veteran guys that will get the job done. I'm very optimistic about it. Same with the tight ends. Now for the future, and that's why you don't give a ton of draft picks up to go get a Patrick Peterson or go get whomever, because it's too expensive. You need to draft a wide receiver next year in the top 3 rounds. We don't know what J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's potential is. I think he will have a better year next year, second year in the league. The coaches tell you things. There's a reason why he's not on the field. You have to draft another defensive back, maybe multiple next year. You have to address the defensive line issues because they don't have depth in those positions, and they're older. The depth is older, so they have to draft a linebacker. They have to really do well next year in the draft. I'll leave it at that. Have a Colts-type draft where you're going to get 2 All-Pros in Nelson and the linebacker Leonard type situation, because if they don't, they won't have the money that they used to have to spend. Now, Peters will be off the books, so that will help. I would assume he's not going to be back with the team next year. So they have to spend money. They have to hit it in the draft, Josh. That's the only way, in my opinion, they'll be able to sustain success moving forward with that Carson Wentz contract.
Colin Thompson joining me on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow on Twitter at Colin Thompson TU. The final topic here on episode 53 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. Disney Plus is launching this month, and I want to give a bit of a warning to everybody who are fans of the Disney Plus platform coming, and a little bit of a side warning, not a disturbing warning, but a understandable warning, a cautionary tale to the people over at Marvel Studios, because Kevin Feige and the folks at Marvel have been very vocal about their plans for Disney Plus and the fact that the TV shows like The Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision and Loki and Hawkeye, that all of these shows are going to have direct links to the movies, as much as Kevin Feige has come out and admitted that if you don't watch these shows and then you go ahead and watch Marvel Cinematic movies, that you're going to be missing some information. So when we see movies like the Doctor Strange sequel or the next Thor movie or the next Spider-Man movie and other films, that we might be missing some connections, some information, some background for those movies. Well, that's a great way to incentivize people to be more connected to the Disney Plus platform and the shows. It's a gamble that we have not always seen work out, and here's why. When you look at this season, when it comes to viewership for the CW is building toward a massive crossover event. They're reappropriating the title Crisis on Infinite Earths, a famous comic from the 1980s, and they're combining the storylines that are going on in The Flash, Supergirl, the final season of Arrow, as well as bits and pieces of the new show Batwoman. And the cautionary tale from the CW is that despite their massive universe and despite the massive amount of fans that are online when it comes to social media, when it comes to fan interaction online and at different events and Comic Cons. The television viewership has not been as strong and as pronounced as you thought it might be for a universe that's supposed to be interconnected. And while the CW has clearly been dominated in viewership when it comes to their shows, The Flash has been the number one show on the CW for the last few years. We've seen good numbers for the other superhero shows as well. The 2019 fall numbers have already shown that despite the interconnectivity of all these shows, and despite the fact that it's all connected and they're all related to each other, that interconnectivity and their relation to each other has not strengthened or stabilized the viewership numbers on the CW. In fact, those numbers have actually decreased. The Flash actually has gone down 22% from last year to this year for their season premiere. And while the show is stabilized at about 1.5 million viewers for a live show, and while it is still the number one show in the demo of 18 to 49, the show is still down overall from last year to this year in terms of live viewership. Now, when it comes to total viewership, in terms of both DVR, on-demand, and live programming, there's not a huge uptick in viewership. It's only maybe slightly more viewers. For example, Batwoman only has about 10,000 more viewers if you include DVR and on-demand versus live viewership. The Flash is the same. They have marginally larger viewership. The Arrow, marginally larger viewership. So what gives? Why is it that less people are watching the show despite the fact that they all related to each other? The fact that the Flash, the Arrow, Supergirl, Batwoman, they're all in the same universe. You would expect there to be the same number of viewers for all four shows across the board. Well, there's a couple reasons why this has happened, and this is where the warning comes for Marvel Studios and Disney Plus, that they have to do things a certain way. I think there's a lot of people who are just only connected to certain characters in the CW universe, and the cross appeal has declined because of how different each show is. What makes Flash so popular for whether it's the casual fan or the diehard fan is that The Flash is a show for everybody. So whether you're male, you're female, you're younger, you're older, you're the diehard comic book fan, you're the traditional CW fan, if you don't mind superheroes, you love superheroes, whatever category you fit into as a viewer, The Flash has something for everybody. It's fun. It has interesting storylines, interesting characters. There's depth. There's history. There's a lot going on with The Flash. And they're in the 6th season, so they have a lot of history to draw off of. But when you drop 22% from season 5 to season 6 in terms of premiere viewers, that tells me that something is being lost in translation. Now, whether some people are, maybe a little bit tired of The Flash, maybe they look at The Flash and they say, do I really need to see another season that's dealing with another superhero drama? Maybe that's where the disconnect is. We know that when it comes to, people reviewing online, we do know that when it comes to online polls and when it comes to social media, The Flash is no longer among the top 10 talked about shows online anymore. In fact, it's another CW show that has actually far exceeded The Flash in terms of being talked about online. When it comes to the top 15 in terms of online rankings, online conversation, the final season of Supernatural and the final season of Arrow are being more highly rated and much more talked about than The Flash. So is it that fans are tired of the storyline, or is it less people are plugged in to the traditional television outlet to watch these shows, or more people waiting for the show to come online to watch online streaming, or they're waiting for it to appear on Netflix or Hulu or some other platform for them to watch from one season to the next? I think there is a sense of urgency when it comes to shows like Supernatural and Arrow on the CW, because people know this is the final season. They've invested a lot of years in it, and they want to get in on the ground floor before the show goes away, which is why even though Arrow is currently 5th on the CW's list of most watched shows right now. It hasn't had a great uptick in viewership, but it's kind of been stable from last year's season finale to this year at this point. Overall, the show is down 24% from last year's season premiere to this year, but overall, the numbers are not surprising because there are a lot of people who just unplugged from the show after season 6 just because of the fact that they became disenfranchised with the show in general. So a lot of people who are watching at this point, which currently the show is averaging 750,000 viewers on live and DVR, not including online streaming. I think the show you could factor in is, was smart to say, look, we're near the end, but there's a lot of popularity online. They're getting a great reception. On the flip side, Batwoman, which debuted with 1.8 million viewers on DVR, on demand, and live viewing, has decreased every week since then. It has dropped an overall percentage of about 30%. They are now down to 1.1 million viewers. Why is that? Well, I think a lot of people tuned into the show expecting one thing and they're getting something else. Now, whether people were not paying attention when it came to, the previews, they didn't fully understand what the show was going to be about, that's on them. But I think that the CW is not doing a good enough job at capturing the viewers and grabbing them week one season premiere of a season, and they're losing a lot of the casual fans to these shows. And while they still have a strong viewership, again, when you look at the overall CW viewership on their network, outside of Supernatural, which is ending after this year, so you kind of have to throw out their numbers, the big picture, the only show that is not a superhero show that is getting very good viewership is Riverdale. And I think part of that, you would have to say, has to do with the fact that there is a diehard audience that has been invested in the Riverdale television show now going into its 4th season. And that show, even of itself, has had a roller coaster ride in the ratings. But we're seeing an overall viewership when it comes to people who are watching live, on demand, and DVR for all shows across the board going down on the CW. The only show that's going up is All American. And I think some of that has to do with people pulling the plug. They're not watching on live television as much. They're watching online. They're watching on the reruns of the shows on the platforms like Netflix and Hulu. The general cable dish network audience has gone down. More and more people are getting things like YouTube TV and Hulu and other platforms to watch their shows. So what does this mean for Disney Plus? What this means for Disney Plus is that they have to do a better job than the CW did at capturing the audience day one. They absolutely need to put their best foot forward on episode 1 for all of their shows. Because if they're going to make sure that they have the subscription amount that they want to sustain that platform and those shows, they have to ensure that the people who are watching those shows are going to stay watching from episode 1 to the very end. Because if you don't, you're not just going to hurt yourself on the viewers and the subscriptions on Disney Plus, but you're also going to hurt yourself at the box office. Disney didn't spend billions of dollars to buy 21st Century Fox Studios to lose money. They did it because they realized the future of media is online with these digital platforms, streaming, as well as the movie theater. And the CW has told us very brutally up front from day one for the last few years that they are losing viewers. They're losing the casual fan. The diehard is still there. They're still getting big numbers in terms of the other networks when it comes to a lot of the shows on television. But when you compare the CW to other networks like NBC's strength with The Blacklist, or a network such as ABC, the popularity of The Rookie, NBC is the New Amsterdam show, or Hawaii Five-0 on CBS, you're realizing that viewers are just going somewhere else when it comes to their viewership. They're not per se totally unplugging from television. They're just finding their entertainment elsewhere. And the CW has lost some of the casual viewers. Now, whether you want to factor some of that into people going online and watching, that's a different story. But we know that overall, people are starting to have a downtick in terms of their interest in the CW superhero shows, which makes it even more important for Disney Plus when they do come out with The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and the Hawkeye television show and the Loki miniseries and WandaVision, that they absolutely have to hit a home run on episode 1, because audiences are not treating these shows like they do comics. The comic book fan picks up one and they feel obligated to go through the whole run of a series, of an event, of a story arc, because they already bought one, and if it's good enough to keep their attention, it's one of their favorite characters, they'll keep going. Television is very different. It's I have one episode to sell you. I have a pilot. I have episode 1, season 1, season 2, whatever it is, to sell you. And I think the casual fan is bailing. They're less and less interested in some of these shows. The perfect example is the show Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew is a very famous book from years ago that was very popular with an entire generation or two of people growing up. Nancy Drew, day 1, pilot episode 1, 1.1 million viewers. They lost 40% of that viewership from episode 1 to episode 2. They are now all the way down to only 600,000 viewers after they started with 1.1 million. Why? Because they did not put the best foot forward for episode 1. In fact, people online were pretty much down on the show. They didn't understand it. They didn't like where the show was going. They were very disinterested and disliked the show in general. And in fact, Nancy Drew is among the bottom of the CW shows in terms of average viewership in the 18 to 49 demographic and overall viewership. Why is that? It's that way because they didn't put their best foot forward episode 1. Arrow did their best forward episode 1, and they still had a slight tick down. Batwoman didn't. They saw a major drop off. Disney Plus, with these Marvel shows, has to learn from this mistake. Do not make the same mistakes the CW has. You cannot only depend on the diehard viewer when it comes to these shows. You have to capture the casual fan. What made Avengers a box office billion-dollar hit? Spider-Man, all these Marvel movies, billion-dollar box office successes, is because they captured the casual fan along with the diehard fan. And that's where the real difference is. So Marvel needs to learn from the CW's mistakes that you cannot just apply yourself and appeal yourself to the diehard. You have to capture the casual, because if you don't, on episode 1 of your show, you're going to have diminished returns. And you do not want to see that roll over into diminished returns at the box office, where Marvel and Disney are going to try to make their biggest buck off of the big movie screen, because they're only charging people a low rate on Disney Plus because they believe they can get a high enough membership subscription to compensate for the low number. Well, if you're expecting that to make up for that, then you've got to make sure you're putting the best quality content on that streaming service, so when people go to the movies, there's enough people going to the movies that you don't lose dollars at the box office as well. Thanks for listening to episode 53 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. If you enjoy the content I brought you here in the podcast, hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any thoughts, put it in the comments section below. I'm Josh Hennig, and I'll catch you next time right here for the Mutant Blitz Podcast.